Corey try to exploit here?
I think just busting up the enchantments. If you killed the Wilderness Reclamation, you stifle that huge amount of mana development, and you're going to make Paulos start to basically hard cast, for lack of a better term, those expansion explosions to draw 3, 4, 5 cards, and then you just kind of have to grind through that with all your Yorion chains and hope that they don't have a good way to break them up.
Players looking at some opening hands. Corey on the play. Apollo keeping a 6-land Growth Spiral hand. Maybe that's exploitable. We see a second Growth Spiral picked up by Paulo. Corey has access to a turn 2 Charming Prince. We'll see if he wants to play a tap land or go to work with his 2-2. 2-2 it is. Goes for Scry 2, gaining 2 life, not seeming very important in the matchup.
Yeah, just got to get some pressure on the battlefield here. The Elspeth Conqueror's Death might be worth keeping because it tags 0 as well as Wilderness Reclamation, but the problem is its sorcery speed and it's kind of clunky. And it's one of those cards that, even though Mystical Dispute doesn't cost 1 when it targets it, it's still pretty powerful against it because it's so expensive.
This is a second copy of Elspeth Conqueror's Death. He's considering it strongly. He has his 5th mana source already in his hand. Drawing a spell for sure is kind of nice, and he decides to keep it on top.
I may have actually gone the other direction, though, honestly. I actually kind of like the second Charming Prince to keep putting pressure on. But, it's Corey B, man.
Corey disagrees. Yeah, we'll see if he can figure something out as Treacherous Blessing is deployed. Paulo has picked up the 3rd copy of Growth Spiral. His poker hand is quite nice. 4 of a kind on lands and 3 Growth Spirals. Ooh, and Expansion Explosion. That's a nice kicker picked up here.
For sure. Now, the thing about Growth Spiral is normally the second, third one aren't very good because you aren't usually this flooded. But here, Growth Spirals are just impeccable because you're just going to keep casting them and keep hitting your land drops. And hopefully the cards you draw off the spiral isn't more lands. And you're just going to be able to use them kind of as these like pseudo loot plus rampant growths, which is just amazing.
Passes with 2 spirals up after playing the 4th land. Back over Corey's way. He's going to attack for 2 and then play Agonizing Remorse.
Now, an interesting spot for Paulo. He can choose to go double Growth Spiral and then expansion copy the Agonizing Remorse. At the very least, he can just cast 2 Growth Spirals and then reassess, But there's a good chance the Expansion Explosion is going away this turn, and it'll be curious to see how he wants to sequence.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, right? Because Paulo technically could have just main phased a Growth Spiral, and if he drew an Uro, he used all his mana at sorcery speed. It kind of seems like he had Agonizing Remorse in mind when he played that last turn.
Mm-hmm.
So you see he fires out the first Growth Spiral, draws Shark Typhoon. That might change the equation slightly. Well, we'll see. He puts in a Breeding Pool tapped.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting spot. Now you can choose a Growth Spiral again. It's probably not getting taken by the Agonizing Remorse, but there's no reason to give your opponent the option. They already have a choice between Expansion Explosion and Shark Typhoon, which are 2 just incredible cards in this matchup and just in general.
And Paulo's not going to spiral. He's not going to copy the Remorse. He's going to show the Spiral, the Expansion, and the Typhoon to Corey.
Yeah, if you copy the Remorse, you lose Expansion and Shark Typhoon. My line of double Growth Spiral into Expansion was assuming that you drew nothing of consequence, really, and you just didn't want to lose your entire hand, basically, to the Agonizing Remorse.
And now it's decision time for Corey. Got to be between Expansion and Shark Typhoon, right? Goes for Expansion.
Yeah, and with so much removal in hand, even though it doesn't really tag the Shark Typhoon that easily, you might have to like double up on Oath of Kaya to kill it or something. And it's at instant speed.
Now you see the Growth Spiral. Opt is picked up by Paulo and gets to sit on his Shark Typhoon as we go back over to Corey. Couple Oath of Kayas, couple Elspeth Conqueror's Death, and 3 lands in hand.
For sure. So continuing the attack with the Charming Prince. Not really a whole lot to do. I don't really recommend casting anything. Maybe just make a token with Castle Ardenvale. Maybe use the Yorion and threaten a blink next turn. But this is a pretty weak turn overall.
It's a nice attack, though, because if the Shark blocks, the Oath of Kaya can finish off the Shark. And if not, he gets 2 damage. Paulo makes a 5/5 shark. He's going to think about whether he wants to block or not. Finds a Ketria Triumph, so the hand kind of just air right now. He goes for the block. Here is Oath of Kaya to finish the shark.
Yeah, it's air right now, but that can change in a hurry. Cycling Triumph, cycling Opt, that allows him some real versatility as far as card selection is concerned. I mean, Opt here just finding something as innocuous as Wilderness Reclamation may, well, he's going to put it on the bottom, I guess, but it may have allowed him to do something pretty interesting.
No. Here's one of the holes that maybe the Yorion deck's trying to exploit. Is you see the Wilderness Reclamation goes to the bottom and Ether Gust picked up by Paulo. That one not great, but he does cycle into a Shark Typhoon.
Every now and then I'll get on Arena and I'll like copy paste Seth Manfield's list or somebody's list who's like doing well on the ladder, and I'll fire up. I'll play a couple matches, and the moment I draw Ether Gust against a deck with this not playing green or red, I exit out of the program.
But that's just agonizing remorse. Apollo's gonna cycle the Shark Typhoon. No reason to expose that. Just Ether Gust for the remorse.
That's the best
worth
trade
the same
in
in the hand or otherwise.
Yeah, that is the best trade in history for that Ether Gust in this matchup.
Oh yeah. Shark will rumble across. Paulo gonna do the damage he can after just drawing another land.
Seems like a real good spot for Yorin here. There's only one unknown. Can't play around Dispute. Might as well go for it. You get to blink the Oath and the Treacherous Blessing.
Yeah, he spent the last turn putting the Yorion in hand, so it is an option. Can't Elspeth Conqueror's Death a Shark token.
Yeah. Now, he could have chosen to just go for the Oath of Kaya number 2 from hand to kill it, and then waited one more turn on the Yorion to play around a Mystical Dispute if that was the card drawn for turn. But I never do that. There's only one card. What could it possibly be? Like another.
Yeah, you just bet on it being another copy of Ether Gust. Yeah. All right, Yorion's gonna get 3 fresh cards and kill the shark with the Blessing and the Oath of Kaya. You see a Glass Casket, a Kaya Orzhov Usurper, and a 3rd Elspeth Conqueror's Death added to hand. And yet another Shark Typhoon picked up by Paulo.
Yeah, Shark Typhoon. It hasn't looked super good because Paulo's basically playing in spots to gain incremental advantage instead of just like doing it for the full amount. And that is a huge nod to the Agonizing Remorses and those disruptive elements from this Yorzhov deck. And suddenly we're at a point where Paulo doesn't have a significant mana advantage. He's only ahead by like 2 or 3 mana. And Corey just has literally 8 cards in it. Like
Yorion flies across. Paulo doesn't even consider blocking. Goes to 12. Kaya's going to show up and exile some cards from Paulo's graveyard.
Now, he can choose to target one of his own creatures in his own graveyard to gain that precious 2 life. It looks like he's going to go ahead and fire off an ECD just to kind of get that thing going in case the Kaya dies or in case he just wants to stifle the mana development next turn with Chapter 2.
Yeah, there's also just that Charming Prince left that in the graveyard. You can grab that, blink the Yorion, and do that thing. Nice pickup from Paulo. Here's Uro.
Yeah, that's really turned around. The Shark Typhoon cycled into Reclamation and then Euro drawn for the turn. We can play Euro and bring it back from the graveyard in one fell swoop. And then that 7 power attacker can knock down the Kaya or go for the Jugular, depending on what he chooses. And even though Corey has the answers in hand, he's going to be spending next turn dealing with what's in play. And now, look, we have Expansion Explosion plus Wilderness Reclamation. Is this game just over?
Yeah. Attack you for 7.
Is this game just over?
Reclamation, explode your face.
Is this game just over?
40p said it was a rough matchup. You are seeing how quickly Paulo turned that around. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I was convinced about 18 months ago when this card first came out or whatever.
Paulo vetoed.
Good night.
I wouldn't say quickly up a game, but up a game all the same as players looking for their sideboards.
went from 0 to hero in the span of one Wilderness Reclamation drawn. That was
Well, the
cool.
last round we covered Corey, and he was just kind of tightening his hold on the game against a player playing mono green. Just doom foretold, kill your creature, keep your hand empty, whatever. Paulo kept a 6-lander, right? Everything he did was coming off of the top of the deck every turn, and that was just enough.
Yeah, I mean, he knows the matchup. He knows that with all the Burglar Rats and the Yark's Finlurkers and the incremental discard and stuff like that, you can't really afford to mulligan, and a hand with like 6 lands Growth Spiral or whatever is just good enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to register Growth Spiral, you got to at least be thinking about those 6-land Spiral hands, you know?
Reminds me a lot. Remember back during original Theros Standard when it was like Pack Rat versus Mono Blue versus Esper Control? Esper Control mirror matches would often come down to who kept an opening hand with the most lands. And so if you opened like a 6 or 7 land hand with like 2 or 3 Scry lands, it was a snap keep if you knew the match.
Yeah, Greg Orange would certainly call that a sneep.
Yes, a sneeper. It's okay, Ryan. You don't have to fake laugh at my bad jokes.
I do. It's my job.
I thought your job was giving me a hard time. Am I right, gamers?
I do that one pro bono.
All right. Well, it looks like Corey's going to be on the play here with a pretty lackluster start. Just D-Spark and Elspeth, 2 reactive cards. Paulo's hand, it looks pretty good, but it's a little clunky with just how the land sequence because they just enter the battlefield tapped. If I'm Paulo, I'm probably keeping, but if I'm Corey, I'm probably shipping. You just want some pressure, some early disruption, but it looks like he keeps.
Yeah, both players keeping. Temple of Mystery, another tap land picked up from Paulo. Development will be a little bit slow this game, but has Uro, has Reclamation. Amusingly, has access to Mystical Dispute. It has text, unlike Aether Gust, though mostly going to be a 3-mana mana leak. It's good against Yorion in a lot of spots, though.
Oh, for sure. Like I keep in Mystical Dispute in a number of matchups because it's not bad. You know, like the worst case scenario, it's just like a really bad cancel or whatever. But when it is a 1-mana counterspell for your opponent's best card and you're in, and in this version specifically, when they have so many in the main deck as well as the companion, it's an easy keep. The deck is just kind of clunky and slow, and that's exactly the type of card you want in that matchup.
Yeah, you know, old guys like you and me, we were a little bit spoiled by Mana Leak for a while, but the 3-mana version, it ain't bad.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually kind of off Quench when it was in Standard for a little bit, and then I just started playing it more, and I was like, wow, this card's just still very good. You just have to like pressure your opponents into playing into it. And then I started playing it in the Arena Cube recently, and it's still extremely good there too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Quench on the play. There's a lot of good 3-drops to counter in that cube. I've enjoyed that cube quite a bit. But yeah, back to the magic at hand. Paulo going to work with an Uro. You see the first play finally from Corey is a Yarok's Fenlocker on turn 4.
Yeah, but he went ahead and unlocked the Yorion from the Companion Zone last turn, so he has that at the ready as well. This follow-up Duress is going to be stripping Paulo of one of his key components as well. Though I'm not sure if he should attack the mana and Reclamation or the strength of the spells themselves with the Shark Typhoon. It doesn't really have an answer to that Shark token right now.
Yeah, the options, Reclamation, Typhoon, and Dispute sees a Fabled Passage and an Uro that will be left behind. Takes the Typhoon.
Yeah, now he has to fight through multiple Wilderness Reclamations and a Uro, though. Let's see what he chooses to do here.
You do see second Reclamation picked up for Paulo. He's going to crack a Fabled Passage as land number 5, so he can cast Reclamation and leave up Dispute for at least the Yorion that he knows about. Of course, he untaps his lands anyway, but...
Yeah, now Corey knows, though, that there's a Mystical Dispute hanging out over there, and it's going to be able to counter the ECD. So maybe instead of going for the ECD, it just goes for a D-Spark.
Yeah, it would make sense. Kind of, quote-unquote, using all of his mana either way.
Right. So it seems like Corey has put a stop on Paulo's instep. Or maybe he put one on his own instep so he could do this in response to the castle.
Yeah, it looks like it. Castle of Antris activated. D-Spark hits the Reclamation. You see an expansion being considered as one of the cards in the scry here for Paulo. Fabled Passage the other. Currently doesn't have a land in hand and has access to some Uro.
I definitely like keeping the expansion explosion, and keeping the land makes sense because you have the second reclamation to go with the expansion explosion. You don't really want to crack the land yet, but certainly fine. But this extra reclamation is really going to put the hurt on Corey, I think, because that dispute's going to protect it from the Elspeth Conquers.
Mm-hmm. Kept both on top, drew the spell first, drew expansion, plays reclamation, untaps here, go over to Corey B. Draw is Burglar Rat. Not a lot of help there, just a bunch of 5-mana spells and an ineffective rat.
And you're really about to see why this is such a bad matchup for the Yorion Orzhov deck, man. Like, he's going to draw the Fable. He's going to counter this Elspeth Conquers, and then he's going to draw his land for the turn, and he's going to draw, 8 cards with Expansion Explosion, and either go upstairs for 8 or kill the Fenlurker, his choice.
It's Tribal Raven's Crime versus Tribal Muldrifters, right?
Yeah, it's not a competition, really. I mean, we saw Corey put a huge beating on Paulo all last game, and then all of a sudden, one cycled Shark Typhoon into Euro Reclamation, Expansion Explosion, kill you, and it was just like immediate, and it was just so apparent how functionally different these decks are, and how much the Wilderness Reclamation deck exploits that mana in such a way that the Yorzhov deck just can't handle it.
Elspeth attempted to conquer death. Paulo disputed it. Now we go back Paulo's way. Draws that Fabled Passage. Fetches up a forest. Doesn't quite have the tools to bring the arrow from the graveyard, but has one in hand and an expansion. Gonna put this Reclamation trigger on the stack. Float 6 mana, and we'll see how big he wants to expand.
I feel like just go for the full amount. Maybe leave open 1 mana to counter a Yorion if you draw a second Mystical Dispute, but I wouldn't mind just getting the extra card selection, honestly. And extra damage if he goes to the Dome, too. Pretty big deal.
Lands on the full amount. That is 8. Discards a land. No big deal there. Back to Corey. Yeah. Now gets to resolve Elspeth Conqueror's Death.
Sure does. Shields are down, so the ECD comes down, knocks out the Reclamation, and that constricts the mana. And we're basically back to reset, except now Paulo just has a full grip. There's Euros in the graveyard. There's Ambusher in hand. Could also go for the Wilt to just take out the ECD so it doesn't get that recursion later.
With the Reclamation down, Paulo only with so many options. Taking a look at exiling some cards to escape Uro. That's a good start.
I think
everybody's favorite arena animation.
Yeah, Euro. Yeah, I love the chains. I hate Euro, but the chains are really cool. Oh, looks like he's not going to go for the Wilt. Now, this ECD going to 2 counters means that if he wants to Wilt the next turn, he has to pay more mana. But it looks like he's trying to get this Nightpack Ambusher down while the shields are mostly down.
Burglar Rat for Corey. No response from Paulo. With a 7-card hand, looking at just discarding this Ketria Triome.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Now, Yorn's going to come down, and it's going to threaten to blink a bunch of stuff. Now, I can Wilt the ECD in response. I guess that's what he wanted to happen. He's going to end up discarding 2 more cards here, thanks to the blink on the 2 rats.
Yeah, the Euro is kind of free.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has some options on the second discard.
Yeah, so the
Steam Vents.
Yeah, with the Fenlurker, you exile the Steam Vents, and then with the Rat, you discard the Euro. They're not quite the same effect.
Yeah, you do have to watch out for which trigger you're responding to. Fenlurker, like you said, does exile. Back over to Paulo, your Euro's going to attack.
Well, what do you do if you're Corey? Do you just triple block and hope that it survives? Or, I mean, here's like a perfect spot for Paulo to just use Brazen Borrower to just bounce something for 2 mana, gets to keep his Euro in play, but like may not even care because he can just bring it back from the graveyard immediately.
It doesn't even bother with the Borrower. So Uro trades with the Fenlurker and a Yorion, and oh hey, it's back.
I'm back, baby. Did you notice that the animation the second time wasn't as long for the Euro? It's like even the designers just like understand that this is tedious. Like we're just gonna shorten it the second time he comes back.
Well, they shorten it because psychologically, the second time you see it, it feels longer. So the experience is the same.
Yes, yeah.
That's an efficient use of the code. Another Burglar Rat and a Yorion. Paulo could cast some spells out of the hand here. Brazen Borrower, Expansion, and Nightback Ambusher. Still has the Uro on the table.
Yeah, I mean this is looking okay. There's a lot of options here. I wouldn't mind just like a medium expansion explosion to just kill a rat, maybe just to prevent like your hand getting completely shredded. But maybe he just doesn't care.
Paulo lands on no response.
Yeah. Discard Ambusher, discard Brazen Bar just seems like fine.
Yeah, they're not really what the game is about here. Here's cast on the Ambusher. Oops, I think Paulo meant to discard that, is what we're being told here.
Oh, no.
Well, the best in the world still can blunder.
It's not that bad. He can still just like blink the Yorion, I guess. I might have even just blinked a rat, but I guess it's kind of the same.
There's a Brazen Borrower bounce on the Yorion. Ambusher and Uro attack. Yeah, this position, like you said, it's not bad.
Yeah, and there's at least a chump probably needing to happen here to prevent like a lethal mini expansion explosion. Well, I say mini, but it's still for like 6, so.
Yeah, mini meaning not 18.
I was gonna say, I think the writing's on the wall, though. I mean, even though Corey just hit him again and again and again with so many discard spells, you just saw once the train starts going, the Euro train, like you're not gonna outvalue that thing. It's just too strong.
Yeah, planes off the top for Corey. That wasn't gonna do it. Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa making it look easy as he often does. 2-0 win.